Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the second day of the EU India Chambers of Commerce webinar on the 6 mantras for business excellence for SMEs. For those joining from Bombay, it is another rainy day, but I'm sure that as the day progresses, the proceedings will cheer you up. For those who are joining from elsewhere, welcome, and I'm sure that you will enjoy the day as much as people from Mumbai would. Thank you, the organizers, the staff of the EU India Chambers, the distinguished panelists, and I must say that I apologize for not being present yesterday because of an engagement, but I have come to know of the 3 mantras that you have heard yesterday, and I made a note of them for my own life, as I am sure that you have for yours. Today, another 3 secrets would be revealed, and together with the other 3 that you learned yesterday, I am sure that it will make a huge difference not only to your business, but also to your personal, professional, and family lives, and as members of a community. So therefore, this webinar is of crucial importance to all of us, individually and collectively. It is not my intention to speak about the subject. You have heard some of it yesterday. You will hear more of it today from the distinguished panelists. I would just like to focus on 2 things that I think are very important to set the context for this. One is the word SME, the small and medium enterprises. You can include even micro enterprises, however way you define it, I think is going to be the cornerstone of all economic growth and revival in the years to come. Large corporations will always exist, but their dependence on the value chain, on the value that is added by small enterprises, whether as a service provider, whether as a manufacturer, whether as a supply chain addition, whether as an advisor, will continue to remain not just critical, but actually will become more critical. The world will always witness a challenge in optimizing resources, whether it is land, whether it is finance, whether it is people, and a crisis like this, which has left the whole world debilitated, will make this resource optimization even more difficult. So it will be small engines of growth who collectively will have a sigma which is greater than the sum of the whole. And this is true not only of India, but it's also true of the world. So those of you who are participating today as members of the SME, my compliments, my good wishes, and my sense of pride that you are the people who will drive the economic revival and growth of India and the world. So it's a big responsibility that lies in your shoulders, and I'm sure that you will come out successful. And it is in this context that a webinar like this becomes even more important, because in your success, in your prosperity lies not just your interest, but a much larger vested interest of people like us who are beneficiaries and users of your services, your goods, your products, your intellect, your hard work. And therefore, we are in this together as a community that will need to make sure that your prosperity and your growth is of our primary concern. It is with this motivation that we chose to have this seminar. Many of these subjects that you will speak about, whether it is leadership, strategy, marketing, are very common words, but woven like a string of pearls in a webinar like this can have a huge synergistic effect on the way you would look at it totally, individually, you, your family members, and your professional staff. Your ability to engage with larger organizations will become more effective. The way you run your business, not merely from a profit point of view, but also sustainability point of view, will become much more important. So therefore, I would only urge you that this seminar should be taken by all of us, including those who are organizing it, as well as those who are attending it, those who are speaking it, as a collective demonstration of our vested interest in seeing it successfully implemented in India, with all of you participants in particular, others who have not joined in general, and the world also included therein, because many of you will have value chains that extend beyond the shores of India. The second thing that I just want to talk about is one dimension of SME, which is very, very critical. SMEs, by very nature, unlike professional service firms, are the collective enterprise of families. This is true not only of India, but true of the whole world. Most large organizations, whether it is the Kentucky Fried Chicken or Bata or any of these companies or Adidas or Coke, Pepsi, anything, started off as a SME, a small family enterprise. The genesis of SMEs and families is since times immemorial and universal. And therefore, SMEs reside within a larger ecosystem or a social system, not just an eco, it's a socio ecosystem of families. And therefore, one dimension of SMEs that is very, very important to keep in mind that all that we are doing, besides a much larger cause, is also the cause of well-being of our own families. And well-being of families is not just the economic well-being, but the social well-being, and most importantly, the harmony that will sustain through generations. So whatever you learn today, whatever you imbibe today has to be understood in the context of the fact that the family and the business are joined in the hip. They have a symbiotic relationship. If you have harmony at home, you will perform well in business. If your business prospers, you will have harmony at home. My favorite expression is to say that when poverty walks in through the door, love flies out of the window. And the reverse is equally true. When this disharmony sets in into the house, even the Taj Mahal will crumble. If imagine for a moment, Aurangzeb had decided that he will destroy everything that his father did, he would have actually raised the Taj Mahal to the ground. He didn't do it because, for whatever reason, even though he was very against his father, he chose not to take his disharmony or angst beyond the point. But there are enough instances in history where this has happened. So these two relationships of having a family harmony and making sure that a business is prosperous is the background context and framework within which this webinar is being set out like a piece of ruby in a crown. And this is even more important nowadays because of the current pandemic. More and more people are staying at home. The relationships are being revisited. People are doing introspection. People are getting more time to engage with each other in the families. While it is expanding attachment, it is also bringing out disharmony. And therefore, I would urge all of you that the principles that you're going to learn here are just as important in family governance as it is in a business. Only the context is different. If you have to convince one of your nephews as to what should be his role, you need sales and marketing and persuasive skills. If you know that which uncle of yours is probably good at handling finance and therefore be able to place that person in the leadership role, you have learned leadership here today. The economy that you must have in your family so that they do not spend beyond their means is a lesson in finance which we are going to learn today. The strategy, should we as a family be involved in the same business, or different members of the family should have different outlooks or careers or aspirations, is a part of the strategy that you will learn today. So the principles, all the 6 principles that you will learn today, imagine the family also as a governance unit in which this will get set in. So whenever you are going through the session today or what you have gone through the session yesterday, please introspect at 2 levels. One within the business level, which you are dealing with professionals, outsiders, and those that you're dealing with your family at the governance level. Because it is in the harmony and the good relationship between the two will you be able to create a profitable, prosperous, and sustainable business. And if there are any differences, just as you reach out to a customer or a vendor and try and sort out differences, please sort out those differences. The principles are identical, the context is different, the application has to be done in a slightly different way. So with those words, I hand it over to the panelists, the distinguished panelists. Thank you, sirs, for making your day available over 2 days. Your time is very, very precious and valuable. And I think we are addressing a much larger problem than what is being sought to be covered by that single sentence that is there on the screen. I firmly believe I've been a great proponent of the future of SMEs in any economy, and therefore let the families prosper, let businesses prosper. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Bharat sir. Snehal, Rajesh has lost power, so he can't be organizing this. So can you shift the presentation to Sanjay Atle, please? Sanjay, are you able to control the system? No? Sanjay? Sanjay, I can't hear you.
He will have to unmute himself, Vittal.
No, but he's unmuted, I think.
Yeah, he shared his screen, Vittal.
Yeah, but I'm not sure whether he's okay. I'm assuming he's in charge of that. Okay.
Can you see the slide?
Yes, I can see the slide. I
Yes,
just
sir.
wanted to make sure you are okay. Okay.
Yeah, I'm there. Yeah.
Okay, great. Thank you, Mr. Bharat, and welcome everyone to all those who were there yesterday and are back today, and anyone else who's new. We are part of a network called Leap to Excel. We were started 4.5 years ago, and we are a set of 24 professionals, and all of us have a single dream, and that dream is about helping and serving Indian entrepreneurs to transform their organization and systems. So almost 95% of our clients are MSMEs and Indian entrepreneurs who are looking at going global or transforming the way they currently are. So yesterday we spoke about 3 mantras. Sanjay, next, please. One more ahead. One more. Yeah, one back. So yesterday we spoke about 3 mantras, which was leadership and what role leadership plays in transformation and creation. We also looked at strategy and how important it is to determine where we want to go. And Mr. Bharat spoke a fair amount about it in his talk earlier. And how do we make our manufacturing operations nimble? Because that gives us a significant impact on the bottom line. That's what we covered yesterday. Today, we will first start with the customer and market, because all of us are in existence because there is a customer. The customer mindset has changed dramatically over the last 4 months. And how do we value the relationship and really create value for each one of them? Then we look at people, because each and every organization can buy the same machines, can approach the same customers, can be in the same geographies. But the one thing they cannot exchange or replicate is people. So how do we work with people? And finally, how do we not account, but we use money as an avenue and means to analyze and prosper our business? Use finance as that method by which we can actually do minute analysis and prosper. We finally, before we close for the last 10 minutes today, we'll look at a case where all these 6 elements were actually in play, and how, if you can do the jugalbandi of all of these 6, you can actually create significant transformation. Thank you, and I will hand over now to Abhay, who will take us through customer and market.
So, Vittal, thank you very much. Thank you very much, Vittal. So we would be talking about customer and market elements today. Yesterday, we spoke about the strategic element and where we are going to connect customer and market dimensions. As mentioned by Vittal, when we started in 2016 with a dream, okay, of helping or fulfilling aspirations of MSME segment, we must have met at least 300 to 400 customers in last 4 years. And related to customer and market, whatever typical challenges we observed, I'm just going to share with all of you. Sanjay? So when you look at the typical areas or the challenges, one of the observations was there was over dependency on very few customers for business. So there were customers, there were manufacturers in the tune of say 5 crores to 50 crores, 100 crores. They had 3, 4, 5 customers with whom they were doing business, and their complete dependency was on them. So during COVID time or during a specific cyclic up and downs in the business, their business very badly got affected. Second was there was no strategy for customer retention. They had customers, but how to retain them and how to develop them. Third element was there was very less focus on market and competition mapping. This particular dimension I spoke yesterday when we discussed the strategy element. Because when we talked about export strategy, how to identify the markets, how to prioritize them, how to get information about those particular specific markets and build on the strategy for that. This is one of the areas which almost every small and medium-sized enterprise was lacking. Competition from unorganized sectors was the next element, which was actually impacting the profitability of all the SME customers, SME manufacturers. And the main reason for this was that the segment or the product or service or a concept in which they were working, there were Me Too competition or Me Too players who were from unorganized sector, which were playing on the price front. And that was forcing SME people to reduce their pricing and directly impacting on their own profitability. Stagnated revenue was another challenge faced by many SME players. Because for years together, when we started talking to them and started working with them, they clearly specified that last 2, 3, 4 years, our revenue is completely stagnated. As there were entry barriers were low, naturally the unorganized sector competition, the point which I mentioned a minute back, was very visible or clearly visible. And there was very less focus on customer relationship management. So if you look at the 6 dimensions, which are typical challenges for SME in the space of customer and market, every element is important. But what we are going to touch upon today is pertaining to the market and competition mapping process, which I just mentioned yesterday that we would be discussing today. Customer retention and development. What are the different processes which are available? And the customer relationship management aspect. So these 3 critical areas we are going to touch today. So 4 specific processes which will help you in terms of achieving these particular things we are going to discuss. Now, one question which naturally will come to your mind, that for larger organizations, these particular processes are there, but are they really relevant to smaller organizations like us, which are having turnover ranging from say 5 crores to even 50 or 100 crores? Yes, all these processes are very important at every possible level, because ultimately for a larger organization, there could be X number of clients. Your number of clients could be less, but retaining them, developing them, and maintaining good relationship with them is very important even at our level. So next, Sanjay. So the first process what we are going to discuss today, which is related to domestic as well as the international market or the export, is the market and competition mapping. You will not believe, but our observation says in almost all the companies with whom we met, the weakest link or the weakest area, they did not have scientific method for market and competition mapping. And this was not helping them okay, in terms of taking right strategic decisions. Yesterday, we spoke about various strategic intents. But if you have those intents, how you will build on the strategy unless until you have the correct data available with you. Now, I'm going to share with you the process by which you can actually capture the data, okay, which will help you in terms of taking the strategic decision. So it is going to be the basis for strategy. It is also going to be the basis for acquiring new clients or identify new clients for your own business, whether it's a product, service, or a concept selling. Now, whenever you talk about data, it's available in three different formats. The first one, everybody is aware, like the data which is available in public domain. Anybody can access that particular data readily. The second is the data provided by specific research agencies like AC Nielsen, ORG Mark, SMEs. Now, these particular data are available at a cost, but they are specific to industries and segments, which are published at a regular frequency. Can be a monthly data, can be a quarterly data, but which is available for you to further analyze and build on your strategy. The third element, you can have a research data using help of a MR agency or market research agency. So you can decide on the hypothesis of that particular project and collect the relevant data which you require for your market, for your product category, for your services. So when you talk about data available in public domain, there are different ways you can collect this data. But which is the best method of having competition and market data with you? It's your own sales and service team. Now, do we collect information on monthly basis from these particular people about competition and market? The answer could be no, or in some cases, the answer could be yes. But then the question is, do we analyze it? And do we really use it as an input for strategic decisions? So in specified formats, okay, we can take this particular data from our own sales and service team because they are our soldiers in the market. There are industrial directories, which is the second way of collecting the data. We talk about industrial development corporations, right? We talk about Maharashtra MIDC. In Gujarat, it is DHEIDC. In Tamil Nadu, it is TIDC. All these people, now I'm giving you example of Maharashtra. We have different industrial pockets, including Thane, Pimpri Chinchwad, Chakan. We have Ranjangaon, we have Khedi Shivapur. All these locations, you have manufacturing directories available in those particular associations. If you collect that, lot of information is available for identifying or finding new customer base. The third element is the technical journals, which talks about a lot of information about companies who are working in the similar field or the fields in which you are interested in moving in the future as per your strategic direction. Balance sheets of competitors gives a lot of perspective and information about their plan. What kind of models they're manufacturing? What is going to be their emphasis in terms of the direction? Do we collect this? The answer could be no, but this gives a lot of perspective to the market and competition information. Fifth could be the data collected from supplying companies to OEMs and other customers. How many times we really capture this particular data of somebody else who is supplying, say, a motor which is used in electrical equipment? The data related to electrical equipment is available on the basis of the data related to motors. So this connection of important parts which are going into the main assembly, do we track that kind of a data? data collected from network and channel, the other distributors who are working in the similar space. Then data published by associations like CM. Again, I'm coming to an example of automobile, but Society of Automotive Manufacturers publish data related to automobile every month on the manufacturing side. So we will get the complete data which is available or given by this particular sources. Lastly, but very important, is the government data published by different ministries on new projects, new investments. Now, this could be related to specific industries if you are part of capital goods industry, if you are a machine manufacturer, if you are manufacturing assemblies or sub-assemblies. This particular data could be of phenomenal importance to you. If you are in building material, and if you are manufacturing even simple aluminum channels for windows, this particular data is also as a part of overall data available for the country, for the region, for the state. Now, all these data points, okay, collectively will give you a solid information on the basis of which decisions can be taken. But it has to be done and followed scientifically. On the export front, it is equally important because yesterday we spoke about the export strategy and the entire process which is followed. So when we talk about embassy, consulate, and chamber of commerce, we have them on both the sides, right? Depending on the trade and depending on the relationship between two countries. You will find either all three of them, that is embassy, consulate, and chamber of commerce. You will find it for Germany. Like for EU, there are a couple of countries for which you will have all the three present in India and vice versa. They are the supports for us in terms of providing the data. Now, this information, unless and until we approach them, ask for it, we will or we might not get it. But by persistent, okay, follow-up and a dialogue, when I'm confidently talking about it, because when I was part of Mahindra and Mahindra or Force Motors or Godrej, we have been collecting this particular data to build the export strategy. Market research agencies, which are again available in those countries who can provide specific data to you, but at a cost. Then third important document which will help you is the import-export data, which you will get from customs site or private agencies who can provide you this particular data. Now, this data, why it is important? If you remember, yesterday we spoke about a specific case related to machine components industry, right? He's a customer or he's a manufacturer from Pune, and he has been using these particular points so effectively because they already have an established market and competition mapping process. Now, they moved from 27 crores to 90 crores in a span of 3 years with a solid process or system with them, which is market and competition mapping. Now, data published by association, as I mentioned about CM in India, it is also available in other countries. So these are the points, if you look at them, and if you establish a process of collecting data pertaining to customers and market, you will get information about new projects, about investments, about the market, about competitors, their activities. And then you can decide about the opportunities which are available for you in the marketplace. I'm not saying we are talking about the globe. Whatever smaller markets you are working today and the markets which you want to work in the future, whether it's on the regional basis as far as India is concerned, pan-India, or it can be specific countries outside India. But this data or this process will really help you in terms of strengthening your own knowledge base. Another small dimension to the same process, like we would be building a knowledge, okay, pool for our own company. Tomorrow, if 1, 2, 3 people from the sales team leave, is it going to affect the knowledge? No, because the knowledge will go with them, whatever they are carrying. But you already captured them as a part of the process or the part of the system, which will help you in terms of just transferring that data or knowledge to the next team or to the next person who is joining the team. So that's the real power of the market and competition mapping, which helps in terms of understanding of the market and customer development. So now I'm going to touch upon the second important element of customer retention and development, which is key account management. So before we proceed, if you have any specific question, okay, you can just put it in the questions box and I would love to reply. And if it is not, then probably during this session, you can add that question in between and we would like to give the reply at the end of the session. So I'm open to both. So we have taken a pause, and if there are no questions, you think about it, and you can add the question in the question box even little later. There is no problem on that. So we will move to key account management process. Sanjay, can you just change the slide, please? So when we talk about key account management, okay, the content and the concept. So everybody of you must be knowing about the Pareto principle. We always say our 80% business comes from 20% of the clients and vice versa. So naturally, all of you will agree that our complete focus or should be on those 80% customers, which are 20% customers, which are giving us the 80% business, because they are critically important for us. Even if we lose one customer from this particular basket, it can really impact adversely on our overall business. So that's the reason why I need to have the key account management process. So in marketing terminology, we call them key accounts. So CAM is an approach, okay, of developing a long-term relationship with strategic customers whose need you understand in depth. And these are those strategic customers which are giving you 80% business. Why do you want to create long-term relationship? Because your progress as a business depends on these particular clients. So when you look at CAM as an overall concept, okay, if you want to consistently maintain that, the principle clearly says that in 80-20, as you are focusing on long-term relationship with strategic customers, you should also focus on the new customers. Because in spite of your efforts, if we don't continue with all the customers all the time, we should be ensuring that we get minimum 20% business coming from the new customers. Second element of CAM as a process, we talk about width and depth in accounts. When we say width, it is expanding, okay, the number of customers. And when we say depth, for every individual customer, we should be understanding the need of the customer and keep providing the right solutions to them. And that's the reason on the content part, we have written long-term relationship with strategic customers who need you understand in depth. Because the moment you understand the need, you will keep working on the offerings. It will keep opening the new opportunities for you. And that will help you in terms of expanding your own business. If you remember, we spoke about yesterday the product strategy, where we talked about product extension, product adaptation, and new product development. This understanding of the customer and his futuristic needs will help you in terms of working on these particular initiatives. And the key account management process actually helps you in terms of understanding this need of the client. 50% business, that's the repeat business we should be getting from the repeat customers. So they are your solid customers, okay, from which you should be getting at least 50% customer. And 30% from the new products and services, which I just mentioned about the depth part of it, which will help us in terms of adding to the new products and services. Now, these are the benchmark numbers, okay, which are just given as a recommended numbers. Two critical things we need to do. One of them is tracking this particular data month after month and ensuring that our salespeople focus on these particular key accounts systematically. Now, when we talked about this 80% special customers or strategic customers, these are the customers for whom we develop a special offer with a differential advantage. Okay? And that has to be with the element that the differentiator is always better than the competition. And that will take us to the happy and satisfied customer base. Many of you must be doing customer satisfaction survey. Could be once, could be twice a year, or probably there could be some companies who might not be doing the CSI activity. Now, this is an activity which is part of the key account management process, which is a support activity, which will keep pushing you to ensure that these 80% business giving customers are treated differently and they remain your key accounts, okay? And they will remain if there is a level of satisfaction with all of them. Now, when you talk about CSI, preferably it should be done twice a year. And it's a great input for all of us, okay, in terms of understanding their concerns about our service, about our offerings, and accordingly make the changes in the offerings or our service level. So this is a nutshell about the process for customer retention and development, which is key account management. We can talk on this particular subject at length, but because of the time constraint, okay, we'll have to cover only the critical dimensions of parameters of the CAM process. The next two we are going to touch, which are inquiry management system and the order lost analysis. Sanjay? Yeah. So when we talk about, so by now, we have spoken and covered two specific dimensions. One is market and competition mapping process and the data points, what you can collect, analyze, and strategize. And second, about the key account management process, which is going to take care of those 20% critical customers, which gives you 80% business. Now, if I ask this question to anybody in the forum today, that from 1st January, I'm not talking about COVID, those 3 or 4 months, what many of us lost in terms of business. But even if you talk about last year, from 1st April 2019 till 31st March 2020, actually, how many inquiries did we receive? And what was this value? Now, the issue is about a receipt or receiving the deals and managing those particular sales inquiries. Now, if this particular answer, we tried to ask this question to many SMEs when we were talking to them and meeting them. Unfortunately, very few had a scientific way of capturing the inquiries. Because when we talk about inquiries, They can be from various sources across, and you must be knowing the answers. It can come through a website. It can come through an email. Or when our sales or service people are moving in the actual marketplace, they must be getting inquiries. Or through many marketing activities which we actually carry out. It could be a buyer-seller meet. It could be a participation in an exhibition, or an emailer or a WhatsApp campaign run by you, or even the digital and social media initiatives driven by you. So all these inquiries, what you physically receive, need to be captured at one particular place and has to be analyzed for how many inquiries we actually gave the quotation for. Now, larger companies, most of the time our observation says that they are not only been captured, but also properly analyzed. So believe that if you have given quotation for 50%, it's very important to understand why we have not quoted for 50% and what were the reasons. And the reason could be that one of the products for which inquiries are flowing in, unfortunately, that product is not there in our basket. Or the delivery time, what market or our customers are expecting, is much lower than our delivery time, what we normally quote. Or the payment terms or commercials, what market is expecting, they are very different than what we are offering today. Or can be even some kind of testing or some kind of testing certification. Now, all these reasons we need to analyze, because that is another input for strategy. And it's a strategic inputs in terms of making that particular correction. Do we need to add some specific products which is required by the market? Do we need to work on the infrastructure and the manufacturing operations, which Kiran spoke about yesterday, which actually will help you in terms of offering that particular product or service in much lesser time that is expected by the client? So all these decisions pertaining to inquiries are actually important, and that gets covered as part of inquiry management system. Now, when we talk about a benchmark figures, again, it is actually increased closure ratio of new accounts by 300%. So that's, again, as I mentioned, there are certain yardsticks or benchmarks set by different companies. They would change as per the industry, as per the product or service what you're offering. So this concept, in addition to CAM, so when I'm talking about this 4 or 5 specific processes, if they are scientifically managed, you yourself will understand the power of these particular processes, how they actually help you in terms of increasing your own business, because that will help you in terms of taking the right decisions about product, about the expansion, what we spoke about yesterday in terms of market and geographies, because you could be getting inquiries even from outside India. So all these decisions are based on the right data, what you captured through the EMS system. Now, when we talk about EMS, there is another side to it, right? We have quoted for 50% hypothetically. That is the example what I gave. Now, what happened to those 50% inquiries for which we quoted? Did we get 100% orders? Answer could be no. And imagine a situation where we actually managed to get 80% of the business out of this 50% for which we have given the quotation. What is important? Those 80% from where we got the business, they are our customers to whom we need to nurture. And if the business is large enough, we want to consider them as a key account and help them in terms of support. And 20% customers with whom we actually lost the business, or 20% inquiries where we did not get the business, the further assessment is important, which is covered in the next slide called order loss analysis. Sanjay? So when we talk about these concepts, they are not difficult. They are very simple. But our observation says that in MSME segment, they are not scientifically followed. And that's the reason why we believe that it's very important on this platform to talk about it and explain you about the importance of these simple systems, which will help you not only in terms of sustaining the business, but also to add a good number of customers and do a profitable business. It will also help you in terms of working on the product strategy part, in terms of the extension or the new product development, or also will help you in terms of the expansion in new markets or new geographies. So our yesterday's discussion, success of that particular strategy, I'm not talking about the setting of direction, but the activities what we spoke about. These processes are going to be the pillars of this. So when we understand that we have lost 20%, we need to further analyze that what were the reasons for losing those particular orders. Was it the product? That our product is considered inferior in terms of quality? Is it the delivery time? Is it the price? Are they the payment terms? All these particular parameters needs to be established by us and monitored. Now, one of the biggest challenge for us that we many a times like the concepts, we believe in them. However, when it comes to rigorously following them month after month and utilizing this data for the strategic decisions is something what is missing. So our task is to work, understand the importance of it, and then establish all these particular processes. So one parameter, so on the basis of the retention and development, we spoke already about the 4 parameters, the market and competition mapping process, the key account management process. We talked about inquiry management system and the order loss analysis. Now, the last element, okay, of my today's discussion with all of you before I take up the questions is about customer relationship management. Now, this CRM, Sanjay, go to the next slide. So we talk about CRM many times, right? We heard this word many times. But talking about customer relationship and living customer relationship, they are 2 different concepts or 2 different ideas. So it is actually a comprehensive strategy and process of retaining and partnering with the customers. That will give you the long-term and profitable relationship. So with every small inquiry, you might not be in a position to have the CRM. But the process is very, very important for those chosen customers. It naturally creates superior value for the company and the customer both, because you are actually treating those customers as partners and vice versa. And it's a great partnership between 2 enterprises, which we'll talk about, okay, relationship management, or a great relation between the organization and your customer. Now, when we talk about, I don't know how many of you have heard about it, but many of you must have come across various CRM packages. So when we look at Salesforce, we look at Zoho, or when we even talk about customized enterprise resources planning packages like customized ERPs, these features are already there. We don't utilize them. So CRM talks about the funnel management, the Spanco theory of pre-sales very effectively. So it talks about the suspecting, prospecting approach, the negotiation, closure, and the order. What is your role in this entire process of pre-sales? And how you can build relation with that particular client, even during this particular process of pre-sales. And that's the foundation you are trying to build for the future. This is that chosen customer, which you believe that is a very, very potential customer for you in the future. And in post-sales, you can always work on two different elements, which I'm just going to touch about. That one, that if this particular customer is your customer, you need to maintain a booklet called, say, customer data management. In Mahindra's, we had this particular process where you actually capture the personal data of all the people you are dealing in or dealing with in that particular organization. And you should also collect the business data. So when I say personal data, it could be a very small gesture like birthday. It could be a very small gesture like sending a wish or a wishes on Diwali or New Year. It can be even sending a best of luck message for that particular person's daughter who is appearing for the 12th standard exam. So all this personal data we used to manage, okay, with all our customers. And that is relationship. How many times we are in touch with the client, and that touch point could be anything. So one of them was personal data management. Second was the business data. What is their plan for the next 3 months when it comes to purchase? What is their plan for the entire year? Are they going to release the schedules for purchasing? Are they coming out with new projects? Are there any expansions planned within the same plant? All these dimensions can be captured as a part of customer data management. And that will really help us in terms of getting, or that's a foundation for the CRM process. So we spoke about pre-sales. We also talked about the post-sales, customer data. The one last element of this process is about building a relationship. So what is most critical? Most critical is walk the talk. And second, walk that extra mile for those chosen customers. So when we talk about that extra mile, we treat these customers differently in terms of providing information. They might require specific info, which might or might not be part of the product or the concept or the service what you're selling, but you are still passing on that particular information. Could be related to industry, could be about competitor, could be about suppliers. Very important for that particular customer. You might give him support in terms of better delivery terms, better price, or even better technical support. That will give him that confidence. Okay, that's a basis of building the relationship. Remaining in touch with him through various aspects, right? We talk about calls. Not necessarily it will be a business call, but there has to be a frequency charter with a clear objective in mind, that how many times we are going to be in touch with the client through telephone calls, through emails, through WhatsApp, or through personal meetings. Now, depending on the customers, if you have done the ABC classifications of the clients, you can always take a decision about how many times you are going to be in touch with them when it comes to connecting with them. And that's the complete process of relationship management. There is a word used on the left-hand side which talks about the strategy part of it. So if your organization strategy is clear about how you are going to build this relationship, what are the activities you would like to initiate, what is going to be the role of a salesperson during SPANCO or the pre-sales, and what you are actually going to do during the post-sales in terms of the data management and in terms of the building relationship. So I believe if we work on these 5 specific processes of market and competition mapping, the key account management, inquiry management, order lost, and the CRM, you will have phenomenal, okay, I will not use that word control, but understanding of the market and your customers. And that will really help you in terms of acquiring, retaining, developing, and enlarging your customers and market. So that's from my side. If you have any specific questions, put it in the question box related to whatever we have covered. Just 3 or 4 minutes, okay, we will spend on the case study. Sanjay, next slide. So whatever elements we spoke about just now, okay, we actually practice them with a customer in Jaipur who is into jewelry manufacturing. So when we talked about the strategy case study, it was a similar target which was given by the MD of the organization. But here, why we are presenting it? Because it gives specific emphasis on the process establishments. So we are only in the second year of working with them, while with the strategic customer, it was for 4 years. So here we actually establish all the 4 processes what we talked about, and then the CRM process. And 2021, whatever number we are talking about of 60 crores, they should be logically reaching the level of at least 50 by the end of 2021. Here we actually worked on 2 elements in addition to market expansion, which are channel and distribution and process establishment. And in channel, in addition to the online, we actually help them introducing various offline formats, which includes shop in shop, large format stores, and exclusive brand outlets. So this particular channel or distribution theory or the strategy help them in terms of getting numbers. Now, why I'm talking about this element? Because during COVID, all their EBO shops, the exclusive brand outlets, either of company owned, company operated, or franchisee owned, franchisee operated, could not give any numbers as there were no walk-in customers. But the online business, we got their presence on 6 different sites from the 2 what they earlier had in the previous year. We also participated on the international sites, which are available through Amazon and through other international sites. And they are seeing the fruits, because if you ask about the number for 2021, in spite of COVID and the pandemic situation, this company will be touching 50 CR by end of this particular financial year. So these 2 strategies actually worked, and the processes what we talked about in terms of acquiring, retaining, and developing customers actually worked wonderfully, because these 2 things we worked on simultaneously, hand in hand, and that actually gave us the real mileage. So thank you very much. This from my side. And before I hand over, Sanjay, go ahead. This I've covered while explaining that particular case. So if you have any specific questions, Atul, are you doing the moderation?
Yes, I'm here. I'm watching the questions.
Okay. So if there are any questions, please let me know. So we would like to reply. And Atul, one question which we got yesterday about sales performance and its review process, that
Yes.
we will take up after Vithal's session jointly.
Okay.
Yep. Good.
So far there are no questions, but we'll wait for a few moments.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's
There
one
is
coming
Sandeep.
in. Yeah, from Sandeep. How do we manage our customers while working from home?
So Sandeep, when we are talking about if the fact, I don't know in which particular business you are in, but if you are talking about maintaining relationship, all the clients with whom we are working today, they always kept in touch with the clients. So when we are talking about building or maintaining relationship, the salespeople were given a clear task of remaining in touch with the client, and they were talking to them after a clear, the decided frequency gap, just to understand what they are doing at their end and when they are likely to start the business. Also to giving them confidence that we are here, and the moment the situation improves, we will help you in terms of supporting, not only in terms of delivery, but also in terms of any other support, which could be technical, could be related to price, could be related to any other parameter. Now, I just read a word pumps. So if you're working in the pump space, and if the manufacturing unit is not working, that is the first situation, you will be able to only give, okay, a reasonable rational commitment to the client, saying clearly that the moment the operations start, we will be immediately, okay, helping you in terms of the supply, and specific priorities to those particular important customers can be given. But if the factory is on naturally, I don't know whether some operations in your factory were on. In those particular cases, whatever was possible through calls or through the element, it's possible to support.
Yeah, there is another one coming from Mr. Cabra. Can we use confidential data in our business, which is of course legally not allowed while taking market data?
Which is legally not allowed.
Yeah, I'll just repeat it. Can we use confidential data in our business, which is of course legally not allowed while taking market data?
No, if you ask me this question, legally it's not allowed. But that is the reason why when I started, I talked about three elements. One is the data which is available in public domain, which anybody can refer to, because that data is available for you to analyze and take strategic action. Second is the data which is available at a cost, which is published by market research companies like AC Nielsen. They regularly publish data on, say, electronic industry, on white goods industry, on many other industry pockets. That data you can buy and you can definitely utilize it. Third, your research data. If you have given this task to any market research agency, you have decided on a MR project with a hypothesis and objectives, they will complete it and hand over that particular data to you as a part of that assignment. So all these three datas you can always utilize.
Yeah, he's making a further point, and he says it's about competitors, market data for competitors.
So when we spoke about collecting data of competitors, we talked about different ways and means of doing that, right? So if my competition, say in the line of business in which you are working, if they are limited companies, that data is available through their balance sheets, which are published in BSE data, Bombay Stock Exchange. So you can always collect that particular data and which is available. The data which is available, again, as I said, publish competitors' data even in public domain, you can always utilize it without any problem.
Okay.
You can't collect it.
Yeah. The next one is coming from Mr. Rajan, but I think it is addressed towards EU-India chambers. He's asking, is it possible to get the recordings of this 2 days webinar? I think Mr. Rajan, towards the end of the seminar, organizers from EU-India would address your questions. Okay.
Yeah,
the next one,
we will be providing. Yeah. We will be providing the recording.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay.
Wonderful.
Next one comes from Mr. Pushkar. He is asking, can you touch upon how to do data filtering?
Who actually asked this question?
Mr. Pushkar Kulkarni.
Pushkar, there are certain statistical tools which are used for data filtering and analysis purpose. Right now, because of the time constraint, I won't be able to give the complete reply. But if you discuss and raise this particular question to us offline, I would love to help you in terms of giving complete information on this.
Okay. So the next one comes from Mr. Mukesh Sharma, and he's asking, is the data available on export import given by private parties for various ports, and is that legal? So it's a specific question about export import data
Yeah.
given by private parties for various ports. Yeah.
This particular data is legal because they have taken specific permissions before providing this data. I will not talk about the name of the company, but there is a company in Pune which is probably giving data on exports, okay, probably to more than 100 companies every month in a required format. And the data is collected through import-export site and through various ports.
Okay, Abhay, that is it. No further questions I can see.
So thank you very much. And I will hand over the button to Vittal now.
Thank you.
Okay, so is my webcam on? So good morning and welcome back. And thanks, Abhay, for that excellent presentation on the customer and markets. Now we move on to the human asset and how that is the key differentiator. Almost all our assets on our balance sheet, we depreciate. This is the one asset, though a lot of companies don't actually put that in the balance sheet. This is one asset that appreciates. It's the one and only asset because money depreciates, machines depreciate, everything else depreciates. This, if we, in that sense, as if you look at it from a farmer standpoint, if we fertilize it, if we give it all the right ingredients, then it really becomes the key differentiator because that cannot be replaced. Sanjay, next please. So if you look at people, there are 4 critical elements of how we manage them. One is the whole element of planning and management. That's about identifying how many people do we need, what are the roles they need to be in, what is the job description they need to have, so that our organization can achieve what we talked about at the start yesterday, our vision, mission and goals. So that is all about how many people, where, doing what, clarity of job descriptions, roles, everything. So that's the first step. The next step is, how do we set targets? How do we review them? And how do we recognize them? So it's about setting targets every year, starting with targets for the organization, and we'll talk about that in the subsequent slide. Then targets for each department, and finally targets for each individual. How often do you review them? How do you recognize achievements? That's the second basket. Then we don't want people to be in the same job forever. We want them to grow. We want them to be able to manage larger and larger roles. So what kind of education and training do we provide to them so that somebody who started off at the entry level one day can at one point become the person who heads the organization? So what kind of training and education as a system do we provide to them? And finally, yes, you plan, you set targets, you review them, you provide education and all that, but how do you actually keep people happy that they really want to work for you? Because otherwise, with everything else that you do, they will move somewhere else. So what can we do as a system, as an organization, to keep them satisfied and feel happy? so that they want to continue working for you year after year after year. So if you broadly look at it, these are the 4 elements that form what we as an organization need to do on as far as people is concerned. We will go into a little bit of a detail in 2 of them, just to give you a sense of what it is all about. Meanwhile, if you have any questions, please use the questions box to put that in, and we will answer that at the end of the session. Yeah. Sanjay, next, please. Okay. So let's look at performance and recognition. To actually get people, teams, and the organization to deliver results, you need to have a clear set of criteria. And that starts with, next please, Sanjay. It starts with what is called the balance scorecard. It is about identifying what the organization needs to actually deliver. And the reason it's called balanced, it does not look only at the short term, it also looks at the long term on one side. It does not look only at targets, it also looks at what you need to do with people. So if you look at the balance scorecard, there are 4 parameters. One is financial. So what are the financial results the organization wants to create? Second is customer. What are you going to do to ensure that the customer is happy? Third is processes. What processes are you going to adopt? And Kiran, in his talk yesterday, talked a lot about how you can work on manufacturing processes to make them more effective and efficient. So, and finally, how do you develop your people? Because they are what will sustain you in the long term. So it's about creating a balanced scorecard for each and every organization, and then at the next level for each and every business or department. That's the first step. Sanjay, yeah. Once you have created the scorecard for the organization and for the departments or the businesses, if there are multiple businesses, can we actually create targets for each and every individual? So we need to have smart KRAs. KRA is key result areas. What each individual needs to deliver. So they need to be specific to that individual. They need to be measurable. A lot of times we put targets which at the end of the year or during the year you can't measure. Then how does an individual actually know what he or she has to do? So specific, measurable, attainable, relevant, and time bound. So the targets have to be like that. Else people don't know कि मुझे ये साल में क्या करना है और कब तक करना है. So it's all about setting from the scorecard, and there needs to be an alignment. I have quite often seen this. So you're in a manufacturing operation, and the manufacturing manager who runs the factory has put a target of 5% cost reduction. And that 5% cost reduction is going to come 3% from process improvement, which Kiran talked about significantly yesterday, and 2% is going to come by reduced material cost. On the other hand, the purchase manager has put a target of maintaining current cost. If you look at these 2 targets set up by the 2 departments, they are actually working at contrary purposes. One has got a 2% assumption of reduction of material cost. The other person has put an actual target of no shift in material cost. Is the organization actually going to be able to achieve its target? The answer is no. Why? There is no alignment. So the scorecard and KRAs create that joint alignment so that everyone is working towards a common purpose. Next, please. So that defines the expectations. This is what I am supposed to do. Next, please. And then as an organization, we need to create a review mechanism. The review mechanism can be monthly, can be quarterly, can be half yearly. But it just can't be a pure annual system, because then there is no chance of corrective action. So review is, as we talked yesterday, about looking at two elements: what's not working well, and also looking at creation of something new. If you do that only at the year end, the year has already passed. So at a bare minimum, you need to do it twice a year, and we would suggest that you need to do it at least every quarter, so that you have enough scope for new creation and corrective action as well. Yeah. So that's how you manage the performance and recognition piece. Sanjay, next, please. Yeah. The other part is about education and training. Let's look at this. So we need to create a strong workforce, and let me define the word workforce. It's not only workers or blue collar, it's everyone working in the system is the workforce. How do we create a strong workforce who can do what we actually need? Not today, that already exists. If the workforce could not do what was possible today, then we would not have been in existence as an organization. Can we create a workforce that does and which can do what we need in the long run? Next, please, Sanjay. And for that, there is a lot of time that we need to spend on learning. Learning is two ways. It can be by being in a program, it can be by practice. So you can go for a formal program like a leadership development program, manager development program, or a time management program, or a Excel skills program. These are formal programs. Yes, they are an important part of learning and education. At the same time, actually doing things on your own is also by practice a significant part. Yeah. So look at some things. Can we learn how to drive a car just by going through a formal program? No. We need to actually sit in the driver's seat and see how it feels. So a lot of learning is also about job rotation, special projects, working on our mindset. Am I willing to take risks or am I not willing to take risks? We talked about that yesterday. How risk averse was the old mantra and how embracing risk is the current way forward. So can we work on mindsets by practice, and can we eventually create, by working together, by practice, a really high performing team? The more high performing teams you can create in an organization, the more you will succeed as a system. Next, please. If you do both of these, the performance piece, starting from the balance scorecard all the way to the regular reviews, and you provide the right kind of education and training, you will create a culture of high performance. The most important thing, however, which is unstated, is the transparency in the system. This will not work if there is no transparency. If things are hidden, people are not told the reality, then it does not work. The best performance management systems work when everyone knows each other's targets. So the manufacturing head knows what is the target of the sales head. The sales head knows what is the target of the service head. The service head knows what is the target of the manufacturing head, and it's not just the other person, it's everyone. So the critical element is transparency. We are all in this together. Any questions at this point of time, please put it into the questions box. Yeah, Sanjay, next, please. We will answer those questions at the end. So let's look at a case study of what we did in a particular organization. Yeah. So let's next, just one bullet. Yeah. So if you look at the client, it's a family managed organization in Rajasthan, and it was set up by the first generation, but currently it is transitioning to the second generation. And they have a huge growth ambition. They want to double their revenue in 3 years. Okay. They also want to create an increased global footprint. When we started this assignment, they actually were working largely, 95% of their business was only in India, but they want to create a global footprint, and there were balance sheet challenges. Next, please. So when we studied the system, what was evident is there was no formal performance management process. Individuals did not have KRAs or targets. There were no job descriptions, and therefore expectations were not clear. The executive in sales had the same elements in his or her job as the manager in sales and as the head of sales. So there was no clarity on who is actually responsible for what. Feedback was very ad hoc, and whenever it was, there was no proper system in place. And net result was the organization objectives were not met. So at the start of the year, they felt, okay, we need to get to so many crores with so much profitability. But if you look at 3 years history, they never reached that. So what got implemented? Next, please, Sanjay. Yeah. So we initially sat with the owners and the family and created a balanced scorecard for the organization. Where did the organization want to be today and 5 years down the line? From that, we created the same for each and every department, and we trained people in the system of how to do that going forward. As a next step, we created key result areas for each and every job so that there was alignment. There was no dichotomy. There was no differences of opinion. And these KRAs was communicated to each and every employee. Not only your KRA, but KRAs of everyone else, so that you could see the congruence. You could see things communicating. Yeah. And for each KRA, there was a measurement criteria. So for example, if we look at something like outstandings, money that has to come in from customers, there was a measurement criteria of number of days of outstanding, and a review process set into place to ensure that at a certain frequency, reviews happen. Yes, one element of the review was saying what was going wrong and therefore what needs to be better, but also a significant part of the review was what can we do differently. We also created job descriptions for all positions, so there was absolute clarity. What does the sales executive do? What does the sales manager do? What does the sales head do? There is no overlap. Yeah. And at the end of that, what was the results we got? In some cases like this, you may not have tangible results. Sanjay clicked a couple of times because incidentally they got 3 new international contracts, but we've not put that down because we can't be sure it happened because of this. So always tangible results may not be there, but there was a lot of intangible results. Each and every employee had role clarity. They were very clear what they were accountable for and what they therefore need to deliver. There was alignment between each and every one. There was no confusion, and the system was transparent. This is what the organization got. This is how you can implement a performance management process in an organization. You can do the same with either manpower planning, and you can do the same with education and training and employee engagement and well-being. This is just one case where we looked at performance management. Next, please. Any questions? Atul, over to you.
Because, two questions are coming, but they are for Abhay. So
Okay,
if I
let Abhay
ask
answer
Abhay
that.
to step in,
Yeah, sure.
So Abhay, there's a question from Mr. Ramesh Iyer,
Yeah, tell me.
and he's asking which CRM application and sales funnel application do you recommend for SMEs, and what is the percentage budget do you think for the automation applications?
I believe Zoho is a package. I'm talking about the base model of Zoho is very, very effective for SMEs. They should not be going for enterprise model, but the base model is very good. And the base investment for that would be in the tune of 1.5 to 2 lakhs initial investment, and there would be annual charges of some amount which are charged by Zoho for maintaining the package.
Okay. Now the next one is from Mr. Surendra Kumar, and he's asking, can an MSME organization whose dues have not been paid in the previous financial year demand from its customers a copy
Right.
of its balance sheet to ensure if the dues appear or not in the balance sheet? And what measures do large-scale companies take to hide this data?
Atul, I believe this kind of data is not published in the balance sheet, right? Because company-wise, I'm talking about. In the balance sheet, there might be a debtors or a payment which is due, but customer-wise data is not given in that particular balance sheet.
Okay.
So they will get a total number, how much outstanding or how much dues they need to pay to companies, but individual getting that kind of data would not be possible.
Okay.
And what was the part B of the question, Atul?
Yeah, it was related to that. What measures do large-scale companies take to hide this data? So do they hide it, and how do they hide it? That's
It's a little
I would
tricky
presume that's
question.
more for Mauli or Sanjay to
Yes,
answer.
actually, I'm not. So, Mauli,
okay.
can you just help me in replying this question?
Yeah, so this data is not available on the balance sheet. You cannot hire this data from anywhere. What you can do is to send a lawyer's notice, if you may call it that, saying that as per my books, you owe me so much. And if you do not respond within 90 days or something, 60 days, I would take it as okay. That's not a perfect confirmation, but it's something that will make the other party respond to you and confirm whether that much balance is due or not in their books.
Mauli, one more point. You can correct me if I'm wrong. If you have a MSME certification, right? If you are registered MSME, then as per the new norms of the government, they are supposed to pay in 45 days time from the date of invoice, right?
That's correct. Maximum 45
So if
days,
that
yes.
is true, maximum 45 days, then I'm really not aware why this particular outstanding has remained for more than a year, or it is a last year's outstanding.
Yeah, it's always possible that there are commercial disputes. He may say your quality was not good. There could be 100 reasons.
Could be. Okay, thanks, Mauli.
Yeah, so Abhay, there's one more kind of comment plus question from Mr. Shant Kumar. He believes that CASA CRM is better than Zoho and Capillary because CASA has real-time analysis versus Zoho or Capillary CRM SaaS. And there's a question, does Zoho provide sales funnel, lead generation, and digital marketing medium tools too?
Yes.
That's from Mr. Ramesh Iyer. Yeah.
Answer is yes. Actually, I will not comment on the other thing because actually I have not used it or I have not come across that particular package. So it's possible that his experience could be better with that particular software or CRM package. But I've come across these three specific products: Salesforce, Zoho, and the Capillary. And I believed Zoho is most suitable for the SME or MSME kind of applications. So
Okay.
it's possible that whatever observation Mr. Ramesh has could be true. So I will have to check that. I'm not aware.
Okay.
Yep.
So there's one question from Mr. Nimesh Vora. What was the name of the other CRM tool other than Zoho? The ones that you mentioned, Abhay?
Salesforce.
Salesforce, Capillary, I
Salesforce,
guess.
Capillary, and Casa. Those are the four that
Casa.
are.
Yeah. So there
They
are
are
four:
four.
Salesforce, Zoho, Capillary. Casa I was not aware, but and there are a couple
Okay.
of customized ERPs, Atul. They can be utilized for this particular application, and they work really well. ERP
Sure.
packages. Yeah.
Again, a comment from Shant Kumar is coming in. I have used Salesforce, Zoho, Microsoft Dynamic. As per my experience, Salesforce is good for B2B.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Actually, both are good. Salesforce investment is much higher than Zoho. So for MSME, whatever customers we have dealt with, Atul, we recommended Zoho because of the lesser investment. Otherwise, if you look at the features and its capability per se, yes, Salesforce is much better for B2B.
Okay.
But for the base applications, what we explained just now, the four processes, Zoho is sufficient. Absolutely no problem.
Okay. Mr. Ramesh Iyer is asking, what about Google applications? Google also provides each of the automation software in Google Suite.
Frankly, Atul, I have not used them. So again, I won't be able to comment on that. Three specific softwares I've used. So,
Okay.
so we will get back to you because we will have to study this particular. There are specific softwares. So unless until I have a clear information on that, I should not be commenting on.
Okay. Thank you, Abhay. The next question is for HR, Director at Vittel. It's from Mr. Indranil Kushari. If an organization is not having distinctive appraisal system, then what are the possible challenges can crop up in future?
Okay, so if you look at it, there are two or three kinds of challenges. First is, how do people know what they are supposed to deliver? So you may have actually people working at crossroads because each one is doing what they think is right, and there is no specific appraisal system which tells you. See, appraisal is not about the year-end review. The entire appraisal process starts with setting targets. So if I don't have a review appraisal system, I don't have a target. How do I know what I'm supposed to do? So the biggest challenge starts there. People are maybe working at crossroads, not on the same wavelength. Okay. Second is, how do we actually achieve our results? Because we are not measuring. What gets measured actually gets done, if you look at it. So there is no measurement system. And since there is no measurement system, people don't know at the end of the year have we actually achieved. And overall, in the long run, the organization may still grow because the market is growing. The organization may still grow because the environment is conducive. But the organization will not grow and get where it wants to consciously. So that's the biggest challenge.
Okay. That's it then. I mean, that was the last question. I think we addressed all the questions. Just one more coming in.
Okay.
Yeah, and that's for Vittal, coming from Mr. Jaideep. What tool would you recommend for implementing balanced scorecard system?
I wouldn't suggest a tool. I would just say use a simple Excel form. Get somebody who understands the balanced scorecard system to create that for you. Don't as a starting point spend money on having a tool. Just create Excel sheets for for the organization, for each and every business or department, and then KRA sheets for every employee. For at least 2 to 3 years, you can live with it on just on an Excel sheet. Eventually, if you want to move to a tool, there are many tools that are available. Almost all HR tools, right from PeopleSoft to SAP to everything, Adrenaline, have the balance scorecard in them. But I would say just use Excel sheets to start with.
Okay, that is it. We are at the end of questions. So
Okay,
we may move
thank
to
you.
the next section.
We move to
Thank
Morley.
you.
Yeah, Morley. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. So we come to the last, but not the least important mantra for excellence in any business. We saw how it was important to have leadership set the tone. We saw the importance of strategy for a business. We saw how important customer and market is. Of course, without that, the business does not exist. We then saw how operations are important in order to satisfy what sales and marketing needs. We saw how HR is important for you to have the right people in the organization that help to deliver what sales wants and what operations has to do to satisfy the sales. But at the end of the day, every businessman is interested in knowing what all this translated into in money terms. So finance becomes most important. At the end of the day, it is the culmination of everything that the business does. So on that note, Sanjay next. So finance is really the lifeblood of every business, and in a way is the sum result of all the other mantras we saw before. Except in a banking financial services institution kind of organization where finance actually is a line function, in most other organizations, finance is a support function, but it keeps track of everything that all the others do and finally produces the sum result of everything else. Next, Sanjay. I always liken this metaphor that the business is like running a well-orchestrated opera with the CEO being the master conductor of the symphony. Finance links all those different players of the opera, that is the functions, through the common denominator of money. So you may have a wonderful plan, you may have a wonderful strategy, you may have the best product, but at the end of the day, if all that translated into money does not meet the organizational requirements or the businessman's requirements, there is no use. So finance is the one that links all this through the common measurement in money terms. Next, Sanjay. Finance is generally not the captain of the ship. There are organizations where finance heads the ship as well by being the CEO, but then the role of that finance function is that of a CEO. But if I talk purely in the terms of the function itself, finance may not be the captain of the ship. However, it is like the radar that tells the captain objectively how the ship is running. An important word here that I want to stress on is the word objectively. Finance is not about pleasing the entrepreneur, the CEO, the owner, and telling him how things are running very well. His role is that of telling very objectively how the business is running. I worked as a CFO in a multinational company for many years. 11 years I was the CFO. Our board was very clear. In our board meetings, we generally had two main presentations. We had the managing director's presentation, and then we had the finance director's presentation. Our board was very clear. Let the managing director tell the story in his presentation, but let the CFO stick to facts and figures in his presentation. Next slide. Next point. Finance often plays the role of following and appreciating macroeconomic events and indicators and judging the impact on the business. So for example, a good finance professional will keep his eyes and ears open for many things that happen globally, as well as nationally, as well as within the industry in which they are playing. And because of his, in a way, being outside the main line functions, is able to impartially judge the impact on the business. Today, business has become extremely integrated. The world has become extremely integrated. So something that Trump twitters in the middle of the night might have an impact early morning on the currency markets, for example. Some geopolitical event that has happened in some part of the world may have some impact somewhere else. A coronavirus that starts in China has some impact on the supply chain across the globe. Many of these events, therefore, a good finance professional is able to quickly spot and judge the impact on the business. That's where a finance function really can play an important role. Next slide. Go on. So there are many facets of the finance function. I will talk about a few of them, and they are mentioned here. So basically, a finance professional will do two things: profit management and balance sheet management. To some extent, they are linked. To some extent, they are a little separate from each other. What are the different aspects within these two main bullet points? One, the analysis of profitability. As I said before, a finance function's major role in a manufacturing organization is how he is able to analyze the different figures, the different parts of the business, the different KPIs of the different functions of the business, and see the impact of that on the profitability of the business. I will dwell on this a little bit more in detail in the subsequent slides. An important part of a finance function is budgeting and costing. Again, more details in the subsequent slides. Data management and MIS, extremely critical. Vittal spoke about performance management minimum twice a year and preferably quarterly as well when you evaluate employees. When it comes to analyzing and evaluating the business performance from a finance role, I would say this has to be done even more frequently, and in my opinion, minimum on a monthly basis. I have seen quite a few businesses, especially in SME sector, who do not analyze results on a monthly basis. Some of them have some indicators that they analyze monthly, like sales, like some elements of cost, but really how well they are doing is generally left to the chartered accountant who comes at the end of the year and prepares the final P&L. Things have improved a lot in the last few years, but in my opinion, review should be done at least monthly. The next three elements are the balance sheet management aspect. We'll talk more about it in the subsequent slides. It's about lean capital employed, it's about cash flow management, and it's about capital allocation. And the last part is about risk management. Honestly, risk management is something that is not necessarily a function of finance. It is an enterprise-wide initiative. But in many organizations, I have seen that the chief financial officer is also the chief risk officer. Again, for the same reason that I mentioned earlier, that he's able to be impartial. He's able to see the sum result of everybody's actions on the results. He's able to analyze macro factors, and therefore, many organizations, risk management ends up being the responsibility of the chief financial officer. The Companies Act has now made it mandatory for corporates to have risk management as part of the board of directors' responsibility. So now there is a risk management committee in which a board member has to be the chairman of the committee. Next. So managing finance and accounting are not the same. An external CA will make your balance sheet but not manage it. This is important for many SMEs who rely on the services of an external CA for making the final accounts or making the annual accounts or for filing the tax returns, which is perfectly fine. Just remember that he will make your balance sheet, but he will not manage it. So you need good finance professional to manage your balance sheet, to manage your day-to-day running of the finance function. Next. Next. So analysis of profitability can happen in various ways. We call them different cuts of profitability. And the more you measure your profitability in different ways, the more you can influence and improve upon it. So you can work out your profitability by segment. You can work it out by product, by customer, by geography, and by market. So there are different ways in which you can analyze your profitability. Normally, the profit and loss account that is published by a company is a consolidated profit and loss account from which you will not be able to analyze and take decisions entirely. You will have to go much deeper into it, analyze it in many more ways in order to be able to take corrective action. It's important to work out profitability according to these different ways so that you can know the relative profitability of each segment, product, customer, etc. You can use that to decide your optimum business mix. You can use that to decide how you are going to allocate the capacity you have in the factory. Which product will you make? Which customer will you serve? All those decisions can be taken if you analyze the profitability in different ways. And therefore, once you measure it, you can initiate efforts for further improvement. Next. For this exercise, we need to bear in mind certain important things. First, the nature of expense. Accounting typically classifies the expenses according to whether it is material cost, whether it's travel expense, whether it is salaries, etc. A good costing way of classifying expenses is according to whether they are fixed or variable. And I'll dwell on it a little bit more in coming slides. And the method of allocation is important. Also, the proportion between how much of the cost is fixed and how much is variable also decides the operating leverage of the business and therefore the break-even level of the business. Use of standard costing and marginal costing techniques are extremely important tools in a finance functions kit. I will talk a little bit about it in coming slides. Remember, analysis and decision making should go hand in hand. There is no point in analysis if you do not use it for decision making, and decision making is not possible at all if you have not analyzed the figures properly. So these two go absolutely together. Next. So we do a small case study here. This is again something that we have worked with. It's an internal case study. Next, Sanjay. So the client in this case is an IT hardware supplying and servicing SME with a revenue slightly below 100 crores. So this is the starting point when the client called us in to help them improve their profitability. The client was interested both in growing the top line and the bottom line. To be honest, when this assignment started, finance was not involved to start with. It was mainly a marketing related assignment. But finance stepped in when the bottom line improvement had to be done. What happened? We analyzed that the client has many divisions. And as I said, division-wise profitability was not being prepared. So it was one consolidated P&L. Division-wise profitability was not prepared. So the first thing that we did was to say, prepare a division-wise profitability. And that revealed major variations in profitability of different divisions. That helped us to take a decision what needs to be done to improve the profitability of the divisions where it was very low, and what needs to be done to continue, sustain, and further improve, if possible, the profitability of divisions where it was already quite high. So what were the results, Sanjay? The revenue grew by 20%. 4 divisions had a margin of 10%. The bottom 4 divisions had a margin of only 4%. But because of the intervention that was done, the margin of those 4 divisions improved to 8%. So you can see that while 4 divisions had 10% from the beginning, the other 4 divisions brought the average profitability down to 6%. When those 4 divisions profitability was improved from 4 to 8%, the overall profit before tax of the organization went up by 60%. So this is one of the ways in which analysis of figures, they say tell a lot, but you need a good analysis of the figures to be able to take actions based on that analysis. Next, Sanjay. Now this is an example not from what we have done, but this is an example to help you understand something that is happening today in the corporate world. This is an actual figures. The figures are slightly, they are not actual, they are made a simple example, but the events and the case itself is from actual reality of today's corporate world. So what is it I'm talking about? So there are 2 companies in the same industry. In normal situation, that means in the pre-COVID situation, both these companies, I call them A and B, had a sales of 1,000 crores each last year. The cost of sales of both these companies were 800 crores. The S&A cost of both these companies were 100 crores. So the operating profit, both the companies had 100 crores. So both are in identical situation as far as the financial figures indicate. Now, in the COVID situation, the first quarter results, both these companies have just declared. Now see what has happened. The sales of both companies became half. So both, obviously, because demand in the economy fell, so both of them, the sales came down to 500 crores. I can tell you at this point of time, the business mix did not change. So whatever was in the pre-COVID situation, roughly they sold to the same pattern of customers in the post-COVID situation. So the sales drop of 500 crores is not because of any big business mix. It is just the aggregate demand in the economy having dropped. But the cost of sales for company A was 550. The cost of sales for company B is 450. The S&A for company A is 75. The S&A for company B is 50. The net result is company A ended up with a loss of 125 crores. Company B just broke even, did not make either profit or loss. This is an actual true case that I'm picking up. As I said, only the figures I have altered for making it simple to understand. But the message is clear in the figures of these 2 companies, even if you take the actual figures that they have reported. Next slide. Oh, 1 bullet at a time. Okay. So my question to the participants, and please, if you can, take a minute and put it in the question box, your reply to that. Why did company A and B perform so differently on the operating profits when sales for both of them dropped by 50%? 1 minute, please, to put your answers in the questions box. What do you think? What do you think? Why did the 2 companies perform differently? Renu, can you mute your phone, please? Mute your line, please. There is some disturbance. Can the others please mute? Okay. Atul, have you got any answers yet?
Yeah, just first one is coming in from Mr. Mukesh Sharma, and he says company B would have worked upon the variable cost seriously.
Okay, very good answer. Anybody else?
Yes, Mr. R.L. Cabra is saying company B opted for high margin products.
I said that there was no change in the product mix. They were both operating on similar product mixes.
Okay.
It's possible. What you say is a possible answer, but not for this case. Okay.
Okay. Mr. Krishnamurthy is saying cost of goods.
Yeah, but cost of goods, why did it drop differently for the two different companies? That was the question.
Okay.
Any more?
Yeah, one more. Mr. Lovely is saying company B controlled their costs.
Very good answer. Quite possible. You're right. Okay. So
yeah, that's it. Yeah.
Yeah. So the basic difference in this case was because of the business model of the two companies. Company A chose to do much more manufacturing in-house. So therefore, they had a much higher fixed cost content and a much lower variable cost content, because for them, material cost was about the only variable cost. Everything else, including salaries of people, etc., depreciation of factory, was fixed cost. Company B, from the very beginning, has chosen to operate in this field through an outsourced contract manufacturing model. They chose to be asset lean and dependent on outside manufacturers to manufacture for them, with their giving the technology to them. So when the volumes drop, they just had to turn off the tap of buying materials from the contract manufacturers, and therefore their variable cost, which was much higher percentage, fell in almost the same proportion as the top line. They had a much lower fixed cost, and that's why they were able to manage this crisis better than company A. You see this today in many industries that are there are many companies within the same industry that are declaring the first quarter results today. Okay, next question, Sanjay. Yeah, Sanjay. Yeah. So having said what I said about why B was able to manage their costs better and therefore their bottom line better, can we conclude, and should we conclude, that B is therefore the better company? Again, it's a question for audience to give their answers. I'll wait for 1 minute. A simple yes or no, or if you want to expand your answer, is fine as well. But my question is, should we conclude therefore that B is the better company because it managed to break even compared to A, which actually went into a rather big loss?
Okay, some responses are coming in. Maybe partly
Yes,
to
please.
your first question, Mr. Indranil is saying operating cost of company A is high as compared to company B. Lovely is saying better managed company. Which one he is not mentioned though. And Mr. Mukesh Sharma is saying no, it is a point of time, not a long-term outlook.
Okay.
Yeah.
Good. So we take those responses, and
yeah.
I agree with Mukesh that based on this, we cannot decide that B is the better company. In fact, this is a trick question. There is no such thing as which is the better company. It is just that these two companies choose to have different business models. One of them wants to have more fixed cost resources so that when the company is doing very well, he will earn more margins or more profits, more absolute profits, because he will use fixed cost resources to increase his top line considerably. Whereas B, you can say, is a slightly maybe conservative company that has decided he would like to have much more of variable cost, so that when a downturn happens, B will suffer less than A. So the answer to this question is actually, it depends on the risk appetite of each company, which kind of model they want to use. Do they want to have a more leveraged, operating leveraged company, or do they want to play little safe and have much more contract manufacturing kind of model, so that they will be able to tide over a crisis of a falling demand more easily than A can, because in the short run, fixed costs have to be incurred anyway. Next point.
Okay. Yeah, while you're speaking, Mauli, a few more responses came in, so I'll just address them quickly.
Yeah, Sanjay, take off this point, please.
Yeah. Mr. Krishnamurthy believes that yes, company B is better. Mr. Upendra is saying need not be, as you just now explained. Mr. Lovely is saying company B is better. Ms. Madhvi is saying not necessarily, quality may be compromised. Mr. Hemant is saying no, A can bounce back subsequently. And Mr. Kabra is saying in depressed market, yes, but not otherwise. So these are the various views.
Yeah, so I think everybody answered more or less. I mean, quite a few of you answered in the same way, that it really depends on which model you chose to be with. So, and therefore the third question, Sanjay, what may happen when the demand recovers and both companies achieve 50% increase in sales? The first point we saw was there was a 50% drop in sales. Now imagine the reverse situation, that COVID had not come in, there was a boom in the market, and there was a 50% improvement in demand. Other things being constant, which company you think would have done better on the bottom line, A or B? Question. I take only 30 seconds for this question for people to respond.
Mr. Naveen is saying that company A will make more profit.
Correct? Correct.
Mr. Lovely is saying company A would do better, and Mr. Mukesh also believes company A would do better.
So
Mr. Hemant also concurs. He also thinks company A is better. So is Mr. Upendra. Yeah.
So all of you are correct. This is a perfect example of a company that uses fixed cost resources in order to increase the value to its shareholders. And it works very well when business expands, because all your costs do not go up in the same proportion as sales. In the case of B, because for him material cost would be 80%, because almost everything he's buying from outside. When sales go up by 50%, his material cost will also go up by 50%. And therefore, he will earn lower profits on the incremental sales than company A does. Right. So this is entirely an aspect of risk management and risk appetite of each of the business. In fact, I was on the conference call of company B, and when company B very happily pronounced that we have done much better than our competitor, that we have broken even because of our asset lean contract manufacturing model, one of the participants of that telephone call asked, but don't you want to change your model and become more in-house manufacturing? And the management of the company absolutely categorically said, no, we have built this company on the philosophy that we want to be extremely lean asset managed company. That is their risk appetite. So no disputing that. That is the way they chose to run their business model. Okay, next. Now we come to balance sheet management. Next, Sanjay. So these are some of the big picture questions. What makes a strong balance sheet? In accounting, as students of accounting and students of finance, we have learned that a balance sheet has two sides. There are assets and there are liabilities. Assets is what you own and liabilities is what you owe to others. And we've always learned that assets are good, liabilities are not good. Because assets are what you own, liabilities are what you have to pay somebody else. So assets are good, liabilities are not so good. That is how we have learned about definition of assets and liabilities when we started as students. In the business world today, there is a saying that too many assets are actually a liability, and having a lot of liabilities is actually an asset. What do I mean by that? So the world has got away from saying, why do you need to have your balance sheet with a lot of assets, especially fixed assets? especially illiquid assets. The emphasis is more and more on making your balance sheet very lean, as few assets as possible. If you can run your company with minimum of owned assets and somebody else is carrying the risk of funding you in a way, or providing you leased assets maybe, or you have a very low debtors because you are collecting very fast. And on the other hand, on the liability side, if your creditors figure is quite high, and not because you are not able to pay them, but because you have negotiated, say, a 90-day credit from your suppliers, and on the debtors side you have a very low debtors because you are giving only 15 days credit to your debtors because your product is extremely good in the market and everybody is waiting to buy it from you. Your liability side may be higher than your debtor side as far as working capital is concerned, and that is actually very good. That means that your balance sheet is actually or your business is actually being funded by somebody else's money. Look at a restaurant business, for example. All his sales are cash sales, and yet his vendors are willing to give him 10 days, 15 days of credit. So that actually is a good balance sheet to have in terms of a negative working capital. Okay, next. Yeah, I already explained this. Lean is healthier. You don't want your balance sheet to have a lot of assets. As lean as you can be, not only in your personal physique, but also in terms of balance sheet, nowadays that is considered to be better. Debt versus equity. Equity is what the shareholders or the owners have put into the business. Debt is what you have borrowed. And again, this is a question of risk appetite. How much debt you should have on your balance sheet, how much you should finance your business through your own equity. 2:1 used to be considered an was considered in the past a good debt equity ratio. Anything more than 2:1 was considered risky. Less than 2:1 was fine, of course. But nowadays, more and more companies pride themselves on having a debt-free balance sheet. And this debt versus equity is another word for this is financial leverage, is when you borrow funds from outside, pay a certain rate of interest on it. If your rate of return on your business is higher than what you are paying for the debt funds, you are in a better position. That means you're using somebody else's funds to grow your business. And it works fine till such time as you are able to service the debt, both in terms of installment repayments and interest. But the moment your business is not able to generate enough returns, enough cash to repay your debt installments or to pay interest, debt can actually become a noose around your neck. So you have to be careful. And again, this is a question of risk appetite, how much you want to fund your business through debt and how much through equity. Next. Importance of creating reserves, very important. During COVID times, you saw that companies which had strong balance sheet were able to tide over this crisis of April, May, almost complete lockdown, pay all their fixed costs and still manage because they had a huge reserves in their balance sheet. So one of the things advice that we give to SMEs is that please reinvest the profits that you're making in your business. We have found quite a few SMEs taking out profits that they earn from the business and investing it somewhere else, real estate, maybe gold, maybe etc. That is going to weaken your balance sheet and make it more difficult for you to survive times of crisis. Next. So governance is reflected in the balance sheet. P&L is a short-term memory of 1 year. Balance sheet is a cumulative result of many years. Profit and loss account is reflected in your balance sheet. Next. Yeah, next, Sanjay. So balance sheet management has certain important aspects to it. There is one which is the capital expenditure management. That is how much you invest in assets, mainly in fixed assets, and that will really depend upon your capital allocation policy. It will depend to some extent on what I said about whether you want to have a lean asset management policy, you want to have more assets on your balance sheet and be more integrated in the business. So all that will be reflected in your investment policy, your rate of return that you use to say that. Many companies say unless there is a 30% minimum rate of return, I will not invest in new capital expenditure. Payback, many companies have this hurdle that within 3 years, whatever I invest new capex should be paid back in 3 years. Of course, for greenfield expansions, they are slightly, you normally think of 5 to 6 years as a payback period. So this is all part of balance sheet management as far as capital expenditure is concerned. Next. Then you talk about working capital management. Next. Within that, you talk about inventory management. Inventory management is all about being flexible and efficient. So you do not want your shop floor to have materials lying all over the place, as less inventory as possible, and flexible in the sense that can you keep your inventory in such a way that you are able to take the decision of what exactly to manufacture the last variant, if I might call it that, at the as late as possible when the customer is actually ordering it. For example, the pizza example is given very often, that you have the base which is common, so you can keep that in inventory, but whether to make it a veggie delight pizza, whether to make it a chicken tikka pizza, etc., you do at the last minute. So that's the way you maintain inventory. You don't keep ready-made pizzas of different kind all the time in inventory. Receivable and collection management is again all about how well you're able to collect from your customers as low as possible, obviously receivables. Credit policy and payment terms. So credit policy sets the policy as far as do you operate on credit, how many days of credit you give, etc. So all that is governed by credit policy and payment terms. Next. Liquidity management is about how you manage your treasury policy and funds, either if you are in surplus funds, how well you invest them. If you are in need to borrow funds, how do you borrow? Investment policy, as I said, is about balancing risks and rewards. Do you invest too much? Where do you invest? Many companies in the past had invested their extra funds in AA bonds, and then you know what happens when a DHFL collapses or an infrastructure leasing collapses, for example. So investment policy is about balancing risk and reward, whether you are going to chase a few extra points of rate of return, or whether you're going to be more prudent in saying that I shall invest only in, say, AAA bonds, for example, or even in government securities. At the end of the day, cash is like blood circulation in our body. Any obstacle will upset the operations, always hit the profitability adversely. So you need to manage your cash. You can have the most profitable product, but if cash is not in the business, you will always struggle because liquidity is as important as profitability. Next. I will just touch upon planning and budgetary control. This is, as I said earlier, in order to make sure that you are managing the business, that you're reviewing your business, and that you keep on checking, are you doing as per what you set out to do? So there are two aspects to planning. There is a strategic plan, which is more medium to long term. It can be 3 to 5 to 10 years. And this is generally done to align with company vision. Next. There's an annual plan that many companies operate on. This is a very shared short-term commitment to goals. All the employees commit to this, all the different functions commit to it. And this becomes the basis for actually setting your balanced scorecard that Vittal spoke about. Next. There is an integrated enterprise-wide plan that integrates sales plan, manufacturing plan, resource plan, financial plan. So all that is part of the annual plan. Next. And this provides a base for variance analysis and corrective action. So when you set the plan at the start of the year and then monthly you monitor your actuals and compare them with your budgets, you are able to have it's like a goalpost that you have set for yourself. You can compare yourself continuously with the goalpost, see where you are deviating from, take corrective actions after analyzing why you're deviating. Do you need to do something different? Do you need to enhance the efforts on something that you're doing, etc.? So corrective actions flow from the variance analysis. And for doing the variance analysis, the budget becomes a good starting point to compare yourself with. Next. As I said, it provides the basis for rewards mechanism and accountability through key performance indicators. Many companies set their variable pay for their employees. The targets are set based on the business plan. Some companies use business plan to say, if you achieve the business plan, 100% of your targets are achieved, and therefore you get 100% of your variable pay. In a simple way, I'm saying that. And some companies say, no, the business plan is the bare minimum. So if you achieve the business plan, 80% of your target is met. If you want to get 100% of your variable pay, you need to exceed the business plan. Different philosophies for different companies. Next. Yeah, so I will talk, last topic is about risk management. It is, as I said, the chief financial officer generally also acts as the chief risk officer. There are various kinds of risks in business. I have listed here only a very few. So Sanjay, you can put the next 2 points as well. So there are financial risks, which are liquidity risk, business losses, currency risk. If you're operating in a market where you are heavily dependent on either imports or exports, then you have a currency risk. Over leveraging is about taking on too much debt, more than what you can service through your earnings. Default risk is on the customer side. You may not get paid. You may default on loan obligations. Therefore, your bankers may treat you as a non-performing asset that will shut off all further lending by them to you. There are supply chain risks. The COVID situation has proved that very well. Any company that was almost 100% dependent on, say, getting supplies from China, in the first month that China went into a lockdown, they all suffered very badly. So supply chain risks are both on what you get material as well as on the downstream that you supply to your customer. Then there are fraud risks. This can be both internal frauds, external frauds, cyber security, all that comes in the fraud risks. So identifying the risks that are there in the business is the first part of your risk management. Having identified the risks, your risk appetite will determine how much of those risks you would like to carry. There are some risks that are inherent. I mean, business is about risk at the end of the day. If you don't want to have any risk at all, you might just invest your money in a bank deposit. That is the safest, or in the government of India security. But you are in business, recognizing that there is a risk in business. But the whole idea of risk management is to identify the risk, determine how much is your risk appetite. That will determine how much of those risks you are willing to carry, and then developing a risk mitigation plan so that even if you have risk, how can you manage the risk within the appetite that you have? So for example, on the supply chain risk, many countries have now started to say we will have a China +1 policy. That's basically de-risking your supply chain to say, yes, China is probably the cheapest supplier of many of the inputs, but we cannot rely on just one country. What happens if there are floods there? What happens if there is a virus there? So we need to be depending on some other country as well, for example. And that's how India, etc., are coming up as alternatives. So these are different ways of managing the risk in the business. Next. So that finishes my presentation on finance as a mantra. If there are any questions, I'll be happy to take them. Again, I'll give a minute. And after this, I would like to present a case study that combines all the 6 mantras that we have gone through yesterday and today in a live case that I have been a party to. So I'm speaking from experience. But before that, if there are any questions, I would like to take them now.
Bauli, it's 12:52.
Yeah, so maybe I should. Yeah. So maybe I will just jump into
first, a compliment is coming in. A compliment is coming in, Mauli, not a question. And this is from Mr. Shant Kumar. He says this is a good session by Chandramauli.
Thank you.
So that is just a compliment. No question as yet.
Okay. So I will jump into the case, and I think the case is very interesting. Next slide. As I said, this connects all the 6 mantras. This is a case from, the setting is Indonesia as a country. The period is actually around September 97. Those of you who may remember, this was a period when the currency crisis in Southeast Asia happened. The Indonesian rupiah was the worst hit currency amongst all the Southeast Asian currencies. It used to be about 1 US dollar was equal to 2,000 rupiah, it went from one day to the other, it went to 19,000 rupiah equal to $1. So the currency depreciated by 90% in a matter of one day. The background of this case study is this was a company with 15 years of accumulated losses. Next. The company was an auto component manufacturing company. It was selling its entire production to two-wheeler OEM industry. So it did not have any aftermarket. It was only selling to two-wheeler OEMs. And it had recently been taken over by a MNC in August 97. And in September, the crisis happened. The macroeconomic situation of the country is that the rupiah, as I said, plunged from 2,000 to 19,000 to $1. The country went bankrupt. The entire Indonesia as a country went bankrupt. The banking system completely collapsed. Majority of the companies in Indonesia went almost bankrupt. Obviously, you can imagine the demand in the economy crashed, and Indonesia, which used to be treated as a tiger economy, went silent. Next. This company too went bankrupt. And the management of the company, as I said, it had recently been taken over by a multinational. So the parent company seriously considered if it should walk away from the country, writing off whatever it had invested 1 month before. So the question was, do we write off whatever we invested 1 month before, or do we put in more money and try to revive the company? So no, don't start this slide. Yeah. So I will now tell you what happened. So the leadership, and now you will see that every mantra comes into place here. So the leadership of the company, which was from the MNC company that had taken over, they believed and trusted in the local company, and they decided that we will not walk away from the company. Of course, there was a lot of work done in order to show that how the demand will revive, etc. But the trust was placed in the local management, and the company invested $9 million to bail out this company from bankruptcy. The company then got into negotiations with its OEMs, and overnight, as I said, this was such a shock to the country that nobody could understand how to do the pricing of whatever they were selling. Supermarkets in the first 5 days of the crisis, the foreigners who were expatriates who were living in that country and who had dollar money, before the supermarkets could change the prices of their product, they went in, and for the same amount of money that till one day before they could buy one TV, they walked away with 2 TVs, 2 washing machines, and 2 refrigerators. That is the extent of currency depreciation that had happened. So dollar obviously became extremely powerful. So they were able to buy all that with dollar money. So this company had to engage in negotiations with its two-wheeler OEM customers and redecide how to do the pricing of its components. All its input material were imported because Indonesia as a country does not have great engineering expertise and industry in the country. So they had to import everything. So that was known to the customer. So they had to actually go back and talk to the customer and decide how to do pricing. So they agreed with the customer that rather than fix a rupiah price for their component that remained steady for 1 year, because of the fluctuations in the input material cost, because they were all imported, they agreed with the customer that we will change our prices every quarter depending on the yen to rupiah or dollar to rupiah rate of the previous quarter. So that's how they hedged themselves, because otherwise they were entirely importing and selling in the local country. So on the cost side, they had a currency fluctuation, and on the revenue side, they were all in rupiah. So they hedged their business that way. They also started an aftermarket from scratch. They had absolutely no aftermarket presence till that date. So they started to develop an aftermarket from scratch. They were taken over by this MNC company, but the MNC company had plans to improve the quality of the component to bring it to international level of the MNC. But before they could do that, this crisis happened. So at that point of time, the quality of the component was not as good as what the MNC would have liked it to be on par with the rest of the companies in the group of the MNC. So they did not allow their brand name to be used on this component. And that would have helped a lot. If they had that strong brand name, it would have helped in the aftermarket. But because of the, obviously, the policies of the MNC parent company, they did not allow them to use the brand name of the MNC company because the quality was not up to mark. So this company broke all rules of their parent company and adopted a couple of local brand names that they had acquired when they acquired this company, and started to put those brand names on that auto component and developed an aftermarket from scratch. They did a lot of other things. The net result of this was that from a situation of bankruptcy, they slowly started to revive themselves. In the first year, obviously, they still made losses. But from the second year, by the end of the second year, they started to break even. And then the third year, fourth year, etc., they started to improve upon that. So this was the case. I will now spend some time on the learnings from the case. Next slide, Sanjay. So very important when a crisis like this happens, and I'm saying this, a COVID crisis is something similar because it's happened due to a macroeconomic event. It's not something that has happened because of any company. It's happened because something has happened in the globe. It's very important to rally the team together and establish a shared organizational vision for the long-term future of the company, even as the near-term focus is on survival. So they did not just say, okay, let's live for this month. If we can pay our salaries for this month, then we'll see the next month and then this next 6 months. No, that was important. They worked on that. But more important was to set a long-term vision for the company, and that helped to create the confidence for the investor to put in more money to bail this company out. Next. Leadership is extremely important. We saw that. That's the first mantra. So the leader has to manage himself first and then manage his people. It's important to keep your team motivated, for which the leader needs to stay positive first. If the leader himself is despondent, if the leader had taken the easy way out and told his parent company, you know what, it's better, let's just write off this investment, let's walk away from this country, nothing would have happened. But the leader has to stay positive first. He has to believe in himself, his people, his organization, his markets, his customers, everything. So the leader needs to stay positive, then only he can inspire others to be positive. Next. Take bold decisions and experiment aggressively. This is true at all times, but even more true at the time of a crisis. And somehow, in a way, you can say a crisis is the best time to try something different, because there is nothing to lose. You're bankrupt already. Whatever you do from here, you can only get better. You can't get worse. And that was the time, therefore, they were able to take very bold decisions and experiment. And the boldest decision, as I said, was taking on different brand names to sell their component, which no multinational normally will allow. A multinational prides itself on its brand name. Of course, in this case, the multinational parent did not allow them to use that brand name because the quality was not yet up to the mark. But still, they, without telling the parent company, they use different brands and position themselves in different segments of the market differently at different price points. They had the same component inside the package on all the brands, but each brand positioned at a different price level in the market because the brand suggested something better quality at different price points. Okay, next. Teamwork and collective decision making is important to have a buy-in from all concerned. However, the leader has to make the final decision and he has to take it fast. So the leader can take input from everybody, but in a crisis situation, he has to make the final decision. He cannot take forever to decide. He has to do it fast. To some extent, he has to rely on his gut instinct and take the decision. Next. It's important to create excitement at such troubled times to keep up the morale of the people. So in this case, they encourage people to think out of the box across unrelated ideas. In fact, some of the best marketing ideas in this case came from people who were not in marketing. There were people from finance and HR who came across some of these ideas that this company was able to implement in the aftermarket. Next. Build an atmosphere of celebration of every small success so that people stay motivated. You know what this company did in order to boost the aftermarket? it did not give too much results in terms of actual volume, but just to keep people excited. Every day in the evening, when people left the office and went home, they gave everybody 100, 200, 300 pieces of the component and told them, you sell it in your local dealer, whoever is near your house, and tomorrow bring the cash from the collections. This is the price at which you will sell. You can give 5% discount if you want. Take this much components, sell it. And these people were not sales guys at all. They were absolutely from different functions, but they all felt motivated that the company is trusting that even though I'm a worker on the shop floor, I am being told to do a sales guy's job because the company needs every one of us to contribute at such time. So the next day when somebody came back and said, yesterday I sold 100 pieces, here's the cash, it was celebrated by the function. Next. The leader needs to lead from the front, taking responsibility for tough decisions, but giving credit to the team when they succeed. This is like Abdul Kalam, what he said, that when Agni mission failed the first time, he took responsibility, but the second time when it succeeded, he did not take responsibility. He gave it to the chief of the ISRO and said he is responsible for the success. This is how a leader needs to behave. So in this case, next slide. At the end of the journey, the company set a benchmark for what was called innovative marketing. Next. It won an award for marketing excellence. As somebody said, it made a glamorous, sexy consumer product of what was essentially an industrial product. So one of the things in the branding that I did not say was that they actually made headlines on various racing tabloids with their product. And it was a case of reverse sponsorship. They put their product onto a two-wheeler, and the two-wheeler guy won the racing season that year in Indonesia. And instead of normally the component guy will pay sponsorship money to the racing team of the two-wheeler guy, in this case, the two-wheeler guy was sponsoring this company for providing its product to make its racing team a winner. Next. In 5 years, the company wiped out accumulated losses of 15 years and declared its maiden dividend. As I've said in the previous slide, the leader took all the responsibility for the tough decisions he took, the multi-branding, etc. decision that he took on his own. But when the company was rewarded for innovative marketing, he sent the chief marketing officer of the company to take the award. He did not go for it. Or rather, he did not claim credit for it. He went for it, of course, but he let the marketing guy take the credit for what was achieved by the company. Next, I think that's it. Yeah, so that ended the case. I hope you enjoyed that case. It was in a way a combination of all the mantras that we studied about. Leadership was there, strategy, sales and marketing, what operations did, HR did, and finance. So it was a combined team effort that finally led the company out of the crisis and made it one of the most profitable companies in that group. Thank you very much. I hand the mic back to Vittal now.
So thank you. And so we are done with our presentation. Renu, you want to take us forward on how we go from now? Or you want me to talk about it?
You can go ahead, then I'll talk later.
No, so we are done, and we have a slide which has our contact numbers in case anyone wants to discuss individual challenges or this. So this is Mauli's number and his email address, as well as Roshni's number and email address. So if you want to have any one-to-one conversation or any further discussions or anything, please feel free to call either Mauli or Roshni on this number, or just email him or her. We will give the EU team, Renu and everyone else, our numbers. They have it anyway, so that if at any point you want to touch base with us, please feel free to do so. Thanks a lot for having been here for these 2 days, and now I'll hand over to Renu.
Okay, thank you very much. Can we have all the speakers on the screen? Snehal, you can just remove the slide. Can we have all the speakers?
Only Sanjay, Is Rajesh there in?
Anil,
I would request if the slides can be removed, then we can see
Yeah,
everyone.
okay. So Sanjay, do stop the slide share. Sanjay.
actually, we'll have to request Anil also because he's still
Yeah,
paused.
Anil is there, but
Rajesh,
where
are
is
you
Kiran?
back?
Kiran, are you there? Yeah, Rajesh is there. Kiran, Rajesh is there.
Anil is back.
I can't see Kiran. Atul, we can't unfortunately see because his webcam is not working.
संजय बंद करून टाक ना presentation.
बंद कर. Sharing बंद कर. Sharing बंद कर. Screen नाही. Sharing बंद कर.
So just say stop screen sharing in the sharing option.
Okay, perfect.
That's
Okay.
Yes.
Thank you. Okay, great. So I would like to thank each and every panelist, and I'm sure we all will agree it was a wonderful experience. And our speaker, they had given a very holistic and a detailed presentation. And I'm sure, we have a opportunity also to again have this continuation of the session and all. What I would like to mention here to all the participants, after the session you will be getting a survey, which is a very few questions we have it, basically talking about how you would like to rate this webinar, and if you have any interest in having a one-on-one meeting, you can mention, because we have given all the panelists name as well as their field, so you can please take it, and we would request if you can do this is within a week, because then it will be always good to connect with the, and of course we will be sharing the recording and the presentation, so that you will get anyway. So again, I would like to thank each and everyone, really we had a very detailed and holistic approach for this entire session or for the 2 days. Thank you very much. And if any of the attendee would like to have any questions further, they can always write back to us, which we would be happy to share with the other speakers. And thank you.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Thank you.
Thanks a lot. Thank you very much.
Thank you. So
Thank
we
you.
can now sign it off. Thank you very much.